Hello everyone, this is Teacher Roxanne again and welcome to my class. This week, we are going to discuss different characters from Greek mythology. They are known as Orpheus and Eurydice. We are going to have several comparing texts. The first one is Orpheus and Eurydice, written by Edith Hamilton. The second one is not actually a text, it's a painting made by Edward John Poynter. The second text is Eurydice, written by Hilda Doolittle. And the last one is A Tree-Telling Tale of Orpheus by Denis Levertov. Maybe you're asking a question. What's the difference between these texts? Alright, these texts are told by different characters in the story. That means there can have differences in ideas. Orpheus and Eurydice's story has been retold from generation to generation, and different mediums have been used. The question is, what is medium? Mediums are materials and methods in which an artist creates and presents his or her work. Now, different mediums can be text, and it can be a painting. Earlier, I have mentioned that aside from several comparing texts, we are going to discuss a painting by John Poynter. Now your task will be to compare scenes in different mediums. That will be myth versus painting. And while you are reading the myth and analyzing the painting, you're going to answer several questions. Those are, what events and characters appear in one medium that don't appear in the other? Next, what feelings are expressed in one version that are not expressed in the other? Next question, how does the author convey a scene differently from the visual artist? And the last one, what details does the author include? And what details does the artist include? Let us begin with Orpheus and Eurydice, written by Edith Hamilton. Before reading the myth, let us have the background information. The tale Orpheus and Eurydice is about mortals and gods that have become well known around the world. Next, Orpheus is a son of Apollo. He is also known as master musician, and he fell in love with a nymph known as Eurydice. Now let us have the author, Edith Hamilton. She is an American teacher and author who wrote many books about ancient Greek and Roman culture. This time, I want you to open your Alpha Literature book, Student Anthology, pages 374 to 381. You can open your website in Alpha as well for audio. Have you read the text? That's great. I hope you understand it. Now, let us summarize the selection. Gods were known as the earliest musicians, whom Orpheus got his gift of music. He was the son of one of the muses and a Thracian prince. His musical ability can move everything animate and inanimate. He also saved sailors and heroes when sailing. They kept their zeal once his melody was heard. Orpheus married Eurydice, but their joy was brief. Eurydice died because a viper stung her. He dared to take a journey to the underworld to bring his wife back to the world of living. Along his way, he charmed those who guarded the entrance, and he persuaded Pluto, the god of the underworld, and gave him Eurydice. But Pluto gave him one condition, not to look back at Eurydice as she followed him. Orpheus and Eurydice journeyed from the underworld, and as he stepped out of the darkness, he excitedly glanced at his wife, but it was too soon. Eurydice was still in the cavern, and in an instant she vanished. After his failure, He forsook the company of men and wandered through the solitudes of Thrace, playing his lyre, and Maenads come upon him and torn him apart. After reading and summarizing the selection, let us answer some close reading questions. Question number 1. What unique talent does Orpheus have? Can you think about it? Okay, the answer is he is gifted at playing music and has no rival except the gods. Everything animate and inanimate pays attention to him when he was playing. Next question. Why does Orpheus dare to go to the underworld? What do you think is the reason behind it? Orpheus is heartbroken over the loss of Eurydice. He wants to bring her back because his grief is overwhelming. Next question for close reading. Before the end of the tale, why is Eurydice not allowed to return with Orpheus? It is because Orpheus is instructed not to look back at Eurydice until they reach the upper world. But he looks back at her too soon, so Eurydice had to remain in the underworld. After answering the close reading question, I want you to think further. The question is, why do you think Orpheus turned around to look for Eurydice? Can you think about it? Okay, because Orpheus' love for Eurydice is too great, he was too excited to see her, and he wanted to make sure that Eurydice is after him. Let us move on to the painting Orpheus and Eurydice, painted by Edward John Poynter. Now the background information is it was painted in 1862. Poynter studied art in Italy, and he is best known for painting myths, legends, and history. Next one, some of Poynter's paintings are The Cave of the Sea Nymphs, Cleopatra and the Asp, and The Catapult. This time, I want you to analyze the situation here in the painting, and later on, we are going to answer something. Let us move on to the next comparing text. It is entitled Eurydice, written by Hilda Doolittle. Who is Hilda? She is a member of Imagist. Imagist is a school of poets who focused on creating clear mental images with their words. The next text is entitled A Tree-Telling Tale of Orpheus, written by Denis Levertov. And who is Denis? She wrote poems on many topics and themes such as nature, love, and social issues. From Eurydice is told by Eurydice herself, while the first text that we have read earlier is told in Orpheus' account. Let us read Eurydice. So you have swept me back, I, who could have walked with live souls above earth, I, who could have slept among the live flowers at last. So for your arrogance and your ruthlessness, I am swept back where dead lichens drip, dead cinders upon moss of ash. So for your arrogance, I am broken at last. I, who had lived unconscious, who was almost forgot. If you had let me wait, I had grown from listlessness into peace. If you had let me rest with the dead, I had forgot you and the past. After reading the poem in Eurydice's account, let us answer the close reading question. The question is, how does the speaker, Eurydice, feel about her rescue? The answer is, Eurydice feels that she was moving toward peace and acceptance of her existence in Hades. She says that she would have eventually forgotten about Orpheus. She didn't want to be rescued only to fall back into Hades. After reading the poem, we have learned different perspectives that Eurydice doesn't want to be rescued by Orpheus. Now let us move on to the next text, A Tree Telling Tale of Orpheus by Denis Levertov. Let us read some excerpts coming from the poem. I was the first to see him, for I grew out on the pasture slope beyond the forest. He was a man, it seemed. The two moving stems, the short trunk, the two arm branches, flexible, each with five leafless twigs at their ends, and the head that's crowned by brown or gold grass, bearing a face not like the beaked face of a bird, more like a flower's. He carried a burden made of some cut branch bent while it was green, strands of a vine tight stretched across it. From this, when he touched it, and from his voice, which unlike the wind's voice had no need of our leaves and branches to complete its sound, came the ripple. In this excerpt, Levertov used a tree's perspective to describe Orpheus, and Orpheus was compared to a tree. Next excerpt, but it was now no longer a ripple. He had come near and stopped in my first shadow. It was a wave that bathed me as if rain, rose from below and around me instead of falling. And what I felt was no longer a dry tingling. I seemed to be singing as he sang. I seemed to know what the lark knows. All my sap was mounting towards the sun that by now had risen. The mist was rising, the grass was drying, yet my roots felt music moisten them deep under earth. He came still closer, leaned on my trunk. The bark thrilled like a leaf still folded. Music. There was no twig of me, not trembling with joy and fear. In this excerpt, the tree described how it felt when listening to Orpheus' music. Now, let us answer the first close reading in this poem. How does a tree respond to the music? Do you have an answer? That's great. The tree's bark thrilled and the twigs were trembling with joy and fear. So for your arrogance, I am broken at last. I, who had lived unconscious, who was almost forgot. If you had let me wait, I had grown from listlessness into peace. If you had let me rest with the dead, I had forgot you and the past. It was then, when in the blaze of his power that reached me and changed me, I thought I should fall my length, that the singer began to leave me, slowly moved from my noon shadow to open light, words leaping and dancing over his shoulders back to me, river sweep of lyre tones becoming slowly again, ripple. And I, in terror, but no in doubt of what I must do, in anguish, in haste, wrench from the earth root after root, the soil heaving and cracking, the moss tearing asunder, and behind me the others, my brothers forgotten since dawn. In the forest they too had heard, and were pulling their roots in pain, out of the 1,000 years layers of dead leaves, rolling the rocks away, breaking themselves out of their depths. You would have thought we would lose the sound of the lyre, of the singing. So dreadful, The storm sounds where there was no storm, no wind, but the rush of our branches moving, our trunks bursting the air. But the music reached us, clumsily stumbling over our own roots, rustling our leaves in answer. We moved, we followed. After reading the poem in Eurydice's account, let us answer the close reading question. The question is, how does the speaker, Eurydice, feel about her rescue? The answer is, Eurydice feels that she was moving to. This is the last excerpt that we are going to read in this poem. By dawn, he was gone. We have stood here since in our new life. We have waited. He does not return. It is said he made his earth journey and lost what he sought. It is said that they felled him and cut up his limbs for firewood. It is said his head still sang and was swept out to sea singing. Perhaps he will not return, but what we have lived comes back to us. We see more, we feel, as our rings increase, something that lifts our branches, that stretches our furthest leaf tips further. Question is, why does Orpheus not return to the trees? Can you look for the details in this excerpt? Okay. Orpheus is killed and cut into pieces. That is why he did not return. After reading the selections, which are Orpheus and Eurydice, told by Orpheus, Eurydice told by Eurydice herself, and a tree-telling tale of Orpheus told by an inanimate object, which is a tree, let us answer critical reading questions. Let us have number 1. After Eurydice dies in the myth, Orpheus decides to go to the underworld to save her. The questions are, describe the challenges he overcomes along the way. Why does he persist in his quest? Let us answer letter A. What are the challenges Orpheus faced? Okay. Orpheus must get past Cerberus, the will of Ixion, Sisyphus, Tantalus, and the Furies before he arrives in Hades. You can see these details in your textbook. Letter B question, why does he persist in his quest? It is very evident, of course. Orpheus persists in his quest because of his love for Eurydice and his grief over her loss. Number 2. Let us in fear. The poem Eurydice is told from Eurydice's point of view. How does Eurydice feel about Orpheus' attempt to save her? Let us answer letter A first. Eurydice was angry with Orpheus for trying and failing to bring her back from the underworld. So we already learned that Orpheus failed to save her, right? That is why Eurydice was mad at him. Question letter B. How does the poet expand on the original myth? The poet expands on the original myth by representing Eurydice's side of the story. The myth speaks only of Orpheus and his grief. So in the first selection that we have read, it's only Orpheus' point of view. And we can clearly understand it if we will know Eurydice's point of view as well. Next question. In a tree-telling tale of Orpheus, the poet uses the literary device of personification, assigning human traits to inanimate objects. The trees can see, dance, and understand. Why might the poet have chosen a tree as the speaker of the poem? It is because it shows how powerful Orpheus was to move even nature with his music. Did you understand? That's great. Let us move on. Contrast the tree's view of Orpheus with Eurydice's view of Orpheus in the two poems. How does each speaker see Orpheus? Now you're going to describe their point of view about Orpheus. Let us have the tree and Eurydice. The tree sees Orpheus as a wonderful man, while Eurydice sees him as an arrogant man who has betrayed her. How about letter B? Why are their point of view different? Maybe it's because the speakers have different reactions based on their personal experiences. As characters, they also have different experiences which may cause different perspective or opinion. Moving on, let us analyze. The first question is, in the tree-telling tale of Orpheus, what elements of the original myth does the poet emphasize? Cite details from both texts in your answer. Can you think about it? Okay. The original myth says that no one can resist him. The poem described trees following Orpheus. So in the first myth that we have read, it stated that no one can resist his music. Now, the detail in the poem which says the trees followed him supports this idea. Next question. Why does the poet depict a tree uprooting itself, a detail which the original myth does not include? The answer is the poet depicts the tree uprooting itself to make the detail in the myth literal. The tree is literally following Orpheus. Well, I hope that you understand the lessons that we have discussed. This time, I want you to open your workbook on page 246. This time, you're going to compare scenes from different mediums. Earlier in this lesson, we have discussed different mediums such as text and paintings. Your task is to read the excerpt below from Orpheus and Eurydice. Underline the important details that the author uses to describe the action and emotion of the scene. Let us read it together. Let us start. So the two passed through the great doors of Hades to the path which would take them out of the darkness, climbing up and up. He knew that she must be just behind him, but he longed unutterably to give one glance to make sure. But now they were almost there. Can you look for important details here that describes the character's action and emotion? Look for it. Okay, the first one is to the path which would take them out of the darkness, climbing up and up. It shows action. The second one is he longed unutterably to give one glance. So it shows Orpheus' emotion. Now let us compare this text to the painting of Pointer. Let us have a Venn diagram. So we are going to differentiate the myth and the painting. We are going to write it here. Let us have the similarities first. So both of them portray Orpheus and Eurydice climbing up the path. As you can see in the painting, they are climbing, and it's also stated in the excerpt given. Next, let us have the myth. It includes descriptions of the action. Next, it describes Orpheus' thoughts and feelings. While in the painting, it shows the couple's great effort to escape. It shows visual details and doesn't show Orpheus longing to look back. Okay, which do you think is better? The writing or the painting? You can have different ideas. On the same page, let us do number 3. Which details in the painting are different from those in the text? How do the painter's choices affect the representation of the story? Include details from the text and the painting in your answer. Let us answer it together. The painter shows the effort the characters are making to escape from Hades. They are leaning forward and their muscles are straining. In contrast to the text, the painting shows how dangerous the path is as the couple avoid snakes. You can see those details in the painting that I have shown earlier. Now, let us have number 4. Which medium text, or artwork do you find more effective in conveying the story's message and emotions? Then you're going to explain it. Actually, in this part, you can have different perspective or opinions. But let me give you an example. Although the myth has more details and is more complete, the painting does a better job of conveying the character's dilemma and their feelings as well as the setting. So it's just my opinion, but you can have yours. This time, I want you to open your workbook on pages 248 to 49, and your task is to identify how authors transform sources. Now, there are many kinds of stories, tales, legends, and myths that are being passed from generation to generation. We cannot expect an original text to be the same. No, it's not. Sometimes it depends on the author's ideas, methods, and sometimes the characters being used in telling the story. Given. Comparing the details from the two excerpts given earlier, let us have the diagram here. So, the differences are, in Orpheus and Eurydice, the narrator is not a character in the story. Second one, it is a traditional retelling, while in Eurydice, Eurydice is the speaker, and Orpheus is not named. Next, readers must determine who you and I are. The similarity is, both tell the tale of Orpheus and Eurydice. Now let us practice. In number 1, you're going to read lines 139 to 161 from the poem A Retelling Tale of Orpheus. In the last paragraph of the myth Orpheus and Eurydice, what details are different in the two versions? What details are the same? Then, record your ideas in the Venn diagram. Here's the Venn diagram. And this time, you're going to do it alone, and I will check it. Well, I hope that you understand the lessons that we have discussed. This time, I want you to open your workbook on page 246. This time, you're going to compare scenes from different mediums. Earlier in this lesson, we have discussed different mediums such as text and paintings. Your task is to read the excerpt below from Orpheus and Eurydice. Underline the important details that the author uses to describe the action and emotion of the scene. Let us read it together. Let us start. So the two passed through the great doors of Hades to the path which would take them out of the darkness, climbing up and up. He knew that she must be just behind him, but he longed unutterably to give one glance to make sure. But now they were almost there. Can you look for important details here that describe